Hey everyone, welcome to the Restoration Podcast, a podcast of hope and healing. Listen as we hear real stories told by real people. Our prayer is that these conversations bring encouragement to your life. All right, well, hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. I first and foremost want to thank you for your patience. We're still very new at this, and every time there's a new episode, we've made some kind of adjustment, whether it's lighting or audio. We're learning a lot each time, so thanks for your patience. Today, I'm really excited for this episode because we have a really special guest, this beautiful lady over here to my right. This is Tori, my wife.
Hello.
Tori, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Can you take just a quick second? It doesn't have to be very long or very lengthy, but can you just tell people who you are, what it is you do, and your connection to Morningside?
Yes. Well, I am Tori Parrales. I am your wife. I'm the daughter of Pastor Johnny and Angie, who are the senior pastors of our church. So that's my connection to Morningside. And then I am a teacher. I teach elementary music, kindergarten through fifth grade. And I've been doing that this is my 6th year now.
Mm-hmm. So. Year 6, yeah.
Yep.
So Tori and I met at Evangel, and you're not going to believe this, but we met 10 years ago. Can you believe that?
Nope.
10 years
Flown
ago.
by.
Yeah, 10 years ago we met, and when I first laid eyes on Tori, I knew immediately I wanted to date her and marry her, actually. It happened pretty quick. But I looked at her and I'm like, man, she does not want to, she's way out of my league. And so obviously things worked out. And so thanks for talking to me 10 years ago. But Tori and I, we've lived here for how long now? Here in Iowa? We moved here in...
It's been almost 2 years.
Yeah, we
almost
moved
3
here
years.
in 2021. So a little history on us. I won't take too long on this, but we met at Evangel, like I said, and we dated for a few years, and then we both got jobs in the Springfield area, which is where Evangel was located. So we spent 4.5 years there. We were both music ed majors, so we got music ed degrees, and then we both found jobs in the Springfield area. So after graduating from Evangel and living there, we lived there again. We got an apartment, and we both got teaching jobs in the Springfield area. So Springfield, Missouri had a special place in our hearts because we were there for a while, 7 to 8 years or something like that. And so we had a lot of friends there from Evangel. We still have family there. Tori's brother and his wife, they're still there. Also Evangel grads, so Springfield is special.
Also music teachers.
Also music teachers, yep. And so Evangel and Springfield have a really special place in our hearts. But very recently, the Lord opened this door for us. Morningside was looking for a worship pastor, and I applied, and obviously things worked out. And so we've been here for almost 2 years, and we've really been blessed here with the people and with this placement, and we're excited for what the Lord's going to do in the near future, which, speaking of which, one of those things the Lord did very recently, I want you to talk about this here for a second, is Tori has this side gig, is what we'll call it. Is that what you want to call it?
A side job, side business. I don't know.
Yeah, tell us about that.
I have always, well, not always, but for several years, I've really loved houseplants. That's been like my biggest passion outside of music. And so I recently started my own houseplant business where I sell plants out of my home here locally. And that's just been something that's really brought me a lot of joy. And I think it brings other people joy too, because it seems like they have really come to discover a love of plants through it as well. The people that I've met through my business.
Yeah. What's the name of your business? Tell us. Share that.
It is Magnolia Roots.
That's
and
a beautiful
you
name
actually came up with the name.
It's a really genius name. Yeah, tell us the meaning behind the name there.
Well, when I was trying to come up with a name, I had a note on my iPhone of just like different words or like phrases that meant something to me that I wanted in the name or potentially wanted in the name.
Yeah.
One of them was Magnolia because that's the street that we live on.
Magnolia Street. Yep.
And it's the first home that we've ever owned. And then another word that I had was roots or rooted,
Yeah.
because my business started through propagation of plants, and I kind of just liked that word. And so Erin just put them together and came up with Magnolia Roots. So,
Magnolia Roots, and she
yep,
was like, "Yeah, that's got a nice ring to it," and so that's
yeah.
that's what it is. And so our home has a what would you call that? Is it a four seasons, what's it called? Our front room there.
It's just a front, like a covered
Yeah,
porch.
like a
I don't
covered
know.
porch before you come in, windows and carpet and all that. And so there used to be like porch furniture, but that's turned into the Magnolia Roots store. Really neat. So if you come to our house and you come in, the first room you're in is the plant store. She's got
Hmm.
shelves. They got plants, and people come over and they can shop, or they can just, most of it's online, right?
Yeah, through Facebook.
On Facebook.
Yep.
And so it's really been great. And so back to the Springfield thing, you kind of you found your love of plants while we're living in Springfield. If
Hmm.
I remember correctly, there was an event here actually at Morningside, and
Oh,
every guest got, was it a succulent as a gift? Is that what it was?
um, I don't remember what that
I think
was.
so, but it
That
was
was a
something
long
about a
time ago.
succulent, and so when you took that home, you like cared for it,
Yeah, that
right?
is true. Yeah, that was my first little plant. One of them that I'd owned was a little succulent. Yeah, and my mom got one too, and we cared for them. And I guess that was kind of the first thing.
It was kind of
Yeah,
new to y'all, and so
yeah.
living in a tiny little apartment in Springfield, there wasn't much room, and so um, it's kind of funny. And you have this documented on Instagram. I think we had a piano bench,
Hmm.
so like a bench for
Yep.
a piano player to sit on, and that's where she put all her succulents.
Yep.
And that
It
was like,
started with just succulents, and
it
then
was only succulents at
yeah.
first, and so
Yep.
ever since then, it's really grown. We had to downsize some of them moving here just
Hmm.
because plants are kind of hard to travel with, I guess.
Yeah.
They don't like the road and all the moving and stuff. And so our house also has a big back room that's Tori's personal plant room. It's really beautiful. It's got lots of windows, and so it's got good lighting. And those are like her personal plants. And I
So I
remember,
upgraded from a piano bench to a
yeah, I
whole room.
upgraded from a piano bench to a whole room.
Yeah.
It's really cool, and that's kind of her peaceful room.
Hmm.
She's there a lot when we're at home. If I don't know where she is, she's usually back there reading a book or just
Yeah.
caring for the plants. It's a really beautiful room, but yeah, that's been a really big blessing. Magnolia Roots plants bring her joy, and it's been bringing other people joy too. And so go check it out. Go follow Magnolia Roots. Go like it on Facebook and Instagram.
Hmm.
So it's really cool. She's really great at making content. She's great at a lot, but she's great at that too. But today, Tori is on because there was a topic that we wanted to talk about a little bit here, just have a conversation. It's a topic that is not always talked about from behind the pulpit, um, and it's something that I think a growing number of people in today's world are dealing with, and I think a lot of Christians are dealing with. But it's something that not everyone likes to talk about, um, and that is the topic of anxiety. And anxiety is kind of a hot topic in the world of mental health today.
Hmm.
And it's something that a lot of people suffer with and struggle with. And a lot of Christians as well are currently living with anxiety. And this is something that Tori and I have experienced through our marriage. We've been married for
6 years.
6 years. Thank you. 6 years now. And anxiety is something that we have learned how to cope with and how to um, overcome together. And it's just kind of one of those things that you don't foresee coming. You know, when you say your vows on your wedding day, you know, it's kind of, you know, typical to hear it on TV shows and stuff. When you hear, you know, for better or for worse, you don't really think about that, right? Would you say the same thing?
Hmm.
That's not something that came to my mind was, you know, a mental health thing that would come along. I didn't think about that. I always think when I hear for better
Or
or for
any
worse,
kind of physical health issues, you don't predict those
yeah,
either.
you don't
Yeah.
know what's coming. And so this is something that, like I said, we have experienced with in our marriage, and we've learned a lot of how to deal with it and how to talk about it as well. So if you're a person that's dealing with anxiety, this is for you. Or if you know of someone that is dealing with anxiety, this is also for you to learn how to talk to that person. And neither of us are sitting here saying we're experts, correct?
Correct.
We're not psychiatrists, we're not counselors, but we are spirit-filled believers. We're a married couple who love the Lord, who just want to share our experience with you to bring you hope and healing. And so, Tori, I'm going to turn things over to you here in a moment, but can you think back to when anxiety kind of first showed up on your doorstep in your life? What was kind of an early memory that you realized this is something that I have and I have to deal with?
Looking back on it now, it probably became something that I struggled with back when I was in college. I don't think I really knew what it was at the time, but I remember being really anxious for my sight singing exams or
Yeah.
different juries or recitals that I had to do. So much so to where I would not eat very much
Hmm.
leading up to them, or I wouldn't sleep very well. And so that's probably when it first started becoming a part of my life, was in college.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, being a music major that's one of the like tougher degrees to get time wise because there's a lot of commitments and tests, and so
Yeah.
we had to always prepare for performances, recitals, and we were required to do like a certain amount every semester. And as you can imagine, that can kind of build stress or anxiety. And so that's kind of what Tori's talking about, is anytime there was a big performance coming up, she kind of noticed that
Yeah. I'd
she would,
never had to perform in front of people that much. And in
yeah,
high school, I just for like solo competitions,
right.
that was the only time I'd played in front of people. But in college, it was like multiple times a semester that you were having to perform
Yeah.
for your peers and your professors.
Yeah,
And
let's put you in a room full of your peers
yeah.
and professors.
And then they grade you on it too.
Yeah, so
At the end of the
juries, for
year.
those of you who don't know, music majors have to do what's called a jury at the end of the semester. It's basically our big final exam. So, like, throughout the year, we work with our private teachers and we work on repertoire scales and stuff. And so, your jury is the big final test. They put you in this recital hall, which is usually meant for performances, but on that day, it's just you and then, like,
You on the stage with
y-
your accompanist.
you alone with your
And then all
accompanist
your professors sitting in the
and
audience.
all these scary professors sitting behind tables, and they're
with
just
papers, and they're marking
looking
down.
at you and making notes. So as you can imagine, that kind of, that can kind of feed your anxiety or your nerves. But when you're saying that that was an early memory, looking back now, knowing what we know now, you now see that that was kind of the beginning of anxiety in your life. But back then, you didn't think that, correct?
I don't think that I knew that's what it was.
Right. You just kind of
Call
thought,
or-
oh, I'm just nervous because everyone gets nervous, right?
Yeah.
And you weren't really sure.
It was just something that I just dealt with, and
Yeah.
I didn't really have a name for it at the time.
Yeah, we didn't really know, right? Okay, so fast forward a little bit. We graduate from Evangel, and then Tori and I get married in 2017.
That was, I will say, that like season right before we got married was a time when my anxiety spiked.
It spiked.
Because that was a really big transitional time in our life.
So it was all my
and-
fault, is what you're saying.
No. And I find that my anxiety kind of goes through cycles or phases, and it is definitely heightened at transition times.
Transitional
and so,
times.
Right before we got married, we were looking for jobs. We didn't know where we were going to live. I was going to be moving out of my parents' house, living with somebody, and I'd never done that before. So it was just a lot. And that definitely was a time that my anxiety increased.
Yeah, and again, at this point, we still didn't know that that was kind of what it was. I just saw it as like personality differences because I'm all about, yeah, let's dive in, let's do something different.
He's a planner. You want to have like everything planned
Yeah.
out, and I can't do that because
And
it makes me anxious.
And I'm also a little more open to change, Like
Yeah.
if things change, it gets me excited. I'm like, yeah, let's dive in for it. And Tori was very much not that. So when we first got married and that was going on, we just thought, oh, we're just different personality-wise. Like people always tell you, you're different than your spouse. You complement each other. So I was like, oh, this is just a personality thing. But Tori, if I can remember correctly, when we really noticed this was when you got your first teaching job. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
So to explain again the timeline, Tori and I got married in the fall of 2017. At that point, she was still living here in Iowa. and I was living by myself in Springfield. So I had a job before Tori did. So we got married in the fall, then we moved in together. And during the spring semester, Tori was just subbing while I still had my full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't until the next school year that Tori got her full-time position. And when the stress of having a full-time job plus now having a husband and all this other stuff, that's when we kind of noticed. I remember you started even telling me about things. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to think back to it because
Yeah.
right now all I think about is like my current job
Right.
and
It seems like so long ago,
what I've
right?
dealt with
Yeah.
that. But yes, I was teaching kindergarten through 8th grade at my first job, and I did not want to teach middle school.
Right.
And a lot of the 8th and 7th grade kids that I was teaching were taller than me, and I was this like young first year teacher.
Yeah.
And so it was just through a lot of prayer and just the Lord's grace that I made it through that first year. Honestly, I look back on it and I don't know how I
Can I be
made it
honest with
through.
you, babe? Like, seriously, when you when you first took, okay, first of all, we were looking for a job for Tori, okay, and we both had faith the Lord would provide.
Yeah, it's really hard to find music jobs.
Yeah, so let's talk about that real quick. So, when you have a very like specific area like art, PE, music, there's not as many openings.
Because there's like one per school.
Yeah, because there's like one
Yeah.
music teacher at that school, especially in a rural state like Missouri, where there's a bunch of small towns. There's only one music teacher.
Sometimes there's one per district.
Yeah, sometimes there's only one that does the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And then we also learned about K-12 jobs, which is one music teacher that teaches everything kindergarten through 12th grade, plus band, plus choir.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, no thank you.
Yeah, we had never heard of that. But anyway, we were in rural Missouri and applying to just every job we could find. Tori knew she wanted to teach elementary eventually, right? That was like her dream, was to teach the younger kids.
I wanted to teach something that had elementary.
Something with elementary in it.
Yeah.
So we're looking, and again, at this time, I had my job, but she didn't either. And so I saw these openings, and there was a tiny little school district that was affiliated with mine. I was in a small district too, but there was a smaller district that kind of fed into my school. And I had asked a friend, our very good friend Dodie, I said, hey, does the school, you want me to say the school name you're at? Do
Sure,
you mind?
yeah.
Jolie Barber is the name of the school. I said, hey, does Jolie Barber have a music teacher? And our friend Dodie was like, yeah, they have one for the whole building. And I remember in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, that'd be so cool if the Lord opened that door, because our schools would be related, you know? And sure enough, I saw there was an opening for Jolie Barber's music.
And I did not want to apply at
Yeah,
first.
and I said,
Like,
Tori, look. And she was like, what grade is that? I was like, K through 8. She's like, no, I'm out.
yeah. Well, and when we drove to see it, it was like out in the middle
That
of
was
nowhere.
funny.
I loved that little school, by
Yeah.
the way. I'm not like dissing
Yeah,
on it,
so
but like it
I was like,
out in the
hey,
middle of
why don't we
nowhere.
just drive to the school and check it out first, you know? And so Tori and I both grew up in the city. She grew up in Dallas, and I grew up in Houston, so we're very much not rural people. And so I said, let's just go check out the school. And so we get in the car, and we drive 45 minutes away, get on this exit, and go on this road. What was the road called?
Normandy.
So I turn on this road,
Dirt
Normandy,
road, yeah.
and the paint on the road goes away. Like, there's no lane.
No.
It's just one wide road.
And there's like cows and horses on either
Cows
side.
on this side, horses on this
Sometimes
side.
there'll be chickens crossing
Chickens
the road.
crossing, typical rural, which is new to us. And I was like, I didn't say anything because I didn't want to discourage her, but I was like, And so then I'm like, it must be up soon, you know, but you go for like,
Couple miles.
you go for a while. And so I was like, where is this school at? And so we keep driving and driving, and I can kind of sense her, not discouragement, but her like uncertainty. Like, is this really what I want? Finally, we crossed this road, and I said, oh, look, that must be the school. And there was this one building
Out in the middle of nowhere.
in the middle of nowhere, and that was it, which eventually Tori got that job, and it ended up being a really big blessing.
Yeah.
But Tori having to teach older grades kind of spiked her anxiety.
Combined with it being like my first job and my first couple years of teaching, and I had nobody that I could talk to because I was the only music teacher in my school and in my district. So I had nobody that could really like help me or coach me.
Right.
I didn't have a curriculum, so I was just like coming up with things on Sunday night that I would teach every week. So yeah, it was It was a lot.
It was a lot. And on top of that, she was newly married. We'd only been married for not even a year yet,
Mm-mm.
right? Because we got married in November and then she got that job and started things in August. And so she's learning how to live with me, how to live away from her parents, from family. Neither of us had family in Springfield.
Yeah.
And then this new job. And so I actually remember something really distinctly that you told me, and you can elaborate on this. But I I had noticed that you would get kind of not discouraged, but like anxious. Now we know what it was. It was anxiety. But you would sit down next to me and try to talk to me about your feelings, which is what you should do. Married people, young couples, talk to each other about how you feel. Okay, be honest with each other. It's really important. It helps your marriage. And so you were doing the right thing, but I was not very receptive. I didn't quite understand. But I remember the exact wording verbatim what you told me. You said, "Babe, something's wrong. I go through these times where I have these negative thoughts."
Mm-hmm.
And the exact wording you used was, I said, "Can you explain? I felt bad because I like seeing my wife, happy. I like seeing her in a good mood. I don't like seeing her down." And so she said, "Well, sometimes I get through these moments where my mind has these negative thoughts." And you said, "And I just go through this downward spiral."
Mm-hmm.
You said that so many times.
Yeah.
You said it just keeps going and going. And then do you remember the genius advice
Yeah.
I gave you?
Just stop thinking about it.
I said, "Well, stop thinking about it." And
Yeah.
then for
And
those
that's
of you
like the
who are
wrong thing to say to a
for
person
those of
with
you who are
anxiety.
married to a
Yeah.
person with anxiety, or someone with anxiety, if they come to you and they tell you how they're feeling, first of all, take that as a compliment. That means they trust you and they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
rely on you and they're trying to get better. But do not respond with just don't think about it, because that's not going to work.
Because obviously, if we could, then we would.
Of course, then you wouldn't be in that, right?
Yeah.
But I remember when we lived in that apartment, you came to me multiple times and you would feel really down.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not like that because, like I said, I like seeing my wife happy. I like seeing her in a good mood.
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt awful, one, because of how you were feeling, but two, because there was nothing I could do about it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't, no matter what I would say, it wouldn't work. I would try to encourage you or try to distract you, but it wouldn't work. And I remember multiple nights you would sit down with me and you would tell me it's that downward spiral. And keep in mind, back then we didn't even, anxiety wasn't even on our radar, correct? We didn't really think this is what it could be. I wasn't sure if it was stress or, again, with that being a transition time, sometimes it takes Tori a little longer to settle with the transition. I said maybe that's what it was, but it kind of continued.
Yeah.
And
That's kind
so-
of how my anxiety has always presented itself.
Yep.
It's just like a negative cycle of thoughts that I can't break out of. Just what ifs and different scenarios that might or might not happen, just going over and over in my head, and just can't break out of it, really.
Did it
So-
ever affect your sleep? I don't think I ever asked you this question. Like, did it ever keep you up at night?
Actually, no. I really like sleep, so I can't really say it's ever affected my sleep.
Yeah.
But I would notice it more like in the mornings before work.
Oh yeah.
My mornings, I would always feel very sick to my stomach in the
Mhm.
mornings. I couldn't eat breakfast because it was right before my day started. And my anxiety has always kind of centered around my job
Right.
and my work. And so it would be that the mornings before school when I would feel it the most.
Yeah.
But I don't remember it affecting my sleep too much.
Well, that's good, and I
Yeah.
know that because you sleep really well,
I do,
and you love your
yes.
sleep. But I also want to add a side note here. It's not that you hated your job, correct? Because you
Right.
loved what you do,
Mm-hmm.
and you loved what you did even back then, even in the school in the middle of nowhere. It was just something almost unrelated. You know what I mean? An attack from the enemy, basically. And I'll
Mhm.
dive into that here in a second. But anyway, we went through that in Springfield for the whole time we were there. Then COVID hit. Did that affect you? I've never asked you that question either. Did COVID spike your anxiety at all?
I don't want to say it spiked it. I wasn't really working during COVID.
Right.
I was just staying home,
Yeah.
which I like being at home. So I don't I don't really think so. Not that
Not
I
really.
remember. No. I wasn't anxious about the illness, I don't think.
Not really.
No.
Yeah. Well, COVID hit, and then we decided to move. So we moved from
Mhm.
Springfield to a small town called Marshfield, which brought
Yes.
another season of transition. Um, was that did it return then? I can't remember a little bit.
No.
Not really.
No.
Well, here's why. I'm just gonna guess. When we moved from Springfield to Marshfield, okay, so we lived in Springfield, Missouri, and our jobs were clear across town, so we would commute.
Mine was an hour.
So yeah, my job was on the way to her job, so we carpooled every day, which was nice. We got to spend a lot of time together. So we would carpool. I'd drop myself off, then Tori would go. So Tori's commute was an hour one way. So when COVID hit, we were like, this is a good time to move. Plus, we had gotten a dog, and we needed a bigger space than an apartment. So when we moved to Marshfield, it cut our commute times in half,
Mhm.
thus cutting our gas in half and all this stuff. So I want to say that move was good for both of us.
Yeah, I loved that
Oh,
change. That was a
wasn't that a
great
wonderful
change for
time?
us.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, we should have done that along.
We had a whole house instead of an apartment.
Yeah, we were in
and
a home, and it was
we had nice neighbors.
really nice. It was a really
It's a
good time.
beautiful little town.
Beautiful town, and it was our dog was happy because she had more space to run. There was no neighbor downstairs hitting with the broom, um, and so I guess that transition went well because it was all kind of beneficial. And
Yeah.
it's not like
And by that point, I had been at my job for 3 years.
you had
I
kind
was
of
in
grabbed
my
a
third
foot.
year.
You were kind of figuring out
And so
how to
I
do
was
it.
I was very comfortable there at that point. Yeah.
And we had the same church, and we had the same friends, so it's not like it was a huge change,
Yeah.
right? Okay, going forward a little more. When the Lord opened this door for us, for me to be the worship pastor and you to come back, okay, talk about a big transition, right?
Mhm.
So what all changed? We had to move states. We didn't have a place to live at first, right? We were living with your parents
Right.
for 3 months.
Mhm.
I had a job, but you did not yet,
Yes.
not right away. So when did that anxiety kick in? Was it when we got here and you were like, oh my goodness, or was it leading up to, or?
Um, I think it was once we were actually in it. I
Mhm.
think leading up to it, I actually thought that it would be a very smooth transition
Right.
because we were moving near family. It was the town that I lived in before we were going to be working at the church that my parents pastored. Like, it all just seemed like it would be perfect
Yeah.
and like it wouldn't really be that bad. But then I got in it, and I think just the combination of not having our own place
Mhm.
and all of our stuff was in storage for like 3 months till we had our house. We were living in my parents' basement.
Living out of suitcases.
Yes. Um, the lead up to getting my job, which the job that I have now is like my dream job.
Yeah.
It like worked out better than I could have imagined.
Same here. It's amazing.
Which again, like when you look at it, you think that that's going to be like a really smooth transition into that.
Right.
But once I started that job, then that brought on a whole new host of things that we'll talk about. And yeah, just like moving away from the comforts that we had. Like, we moved away from our friends that we had there,
Yeah.
from my job that I'd become very comfortable in, our little town that we loved. And it was just a lot of change. And I found myself a lot in that first couple months just like wanting to go back
Yeah.
to the comfortable.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
I remember that. I remember moving here, and you would, again, just like when we first married, you would tell me, babe, I'm very anxious today.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the same thing I did before. I said, well, this must be the transition thing. It's her personality. And just like Tori said, you would think when you see the job Tori has at an amazing school, the actual grades that she's always wanted to teach, like it checks every box. You'd think, oh, she must be super happy. Well, I mean, she is now. But at first, it was very difficult, very
Yeah.
difficult. And
Yeah.
I thought, she's got a great job. She's going to see her parents every day. Like, she's going to be fine. But that's not exactly how it panned out, at first, at least.
Yeah, and like I said, my anxiety is spiked during transitional times, but it mostly revolves around my job. And
Mhm.
so when I started my new job, I remember just in the mornings, there were some mornings that I would wake up and I would be so overwhelmed with anxiety that I physically had to call in sick. Like
I remember
I
that.
couldn't go to work.
I remember that.
I remember on my drive to work, just being stuck in that like negative thought spiral,
Mm-hmm.
just like going through what classes I was going to have that day, what kids I was going to see, what behavior issues I might encounter. I would go over my lessons in my head and just like make sure that I would teach everything perfectly. If I had like a particularly difficult class or student that day, I would be nervous leading up to it. And then when I would get home, I would be nervous about the next day. Like,
Already, yeah.
it's like there was no relief from it. I would just be constantly anxious about something. And I had a new curriculum that I was teaching.
Right.
I had new administration that I was still getting to know. I was in charge of music programs. I was teaching 600 new students
Yeah.
that are very different than the kids that I was teaching
Very
in
different.
Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot. I definitely did not enjoy it the first couple months.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. I remember when you would come home and in our alone moments, you would tell me about all these things. And again, I felt awful because there was nothing I could do. Nothing I said would help. I felt like. And I remember those days when you would call in sick because of the anxiety was so bad.
and that didn't happen very often.
No, it
It
didn't.
was like 2 or 3
Not
times.
too often,
Yeah,
but it was a couple times. And I don't remember the exact timeline, but I think that was around the time when we were like, maybe you should seek some help from someone who knows more than like me.
Well, because we were living with my parents,
Yep.
and they noticed it more, and they saw the toll that it was taking on
Yeah.
me. They couldn't, like, I couldn't hide it because I was
Yeah.
there living with them. And so it was one morning that I had a anxiety attack, and I stayed home, and my mom told me to call the doctor. She's like, if you're going to stay home today, she's like, you need to call the doctor and start taking steps to see if there's something that you can do to help
Right.
you. She's like, because this like can't keep happening
Yeah,
to you.
it's affecting your life.
Yeah, so I did call the doctor that day. I had an appointment. I can't say that I remember what happened at that first appointment, but I will say that it led to me having more meetings with my doctor
Mm-hmm.
and beginning to take steps to help me with my anxiety.
Yeah. So when you went to the doctor and I know you say you don't remember, but when you went, did you kind of walk away eventually kind of relieved knowing that, oh, this is something that I'm not the only one dealing with. Other people deal with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my doctor, when I explained to her the things that I was feeling, she was just like very understanding. She just like nodded her head and she understood, and she's like, she didn't act like I was crazy. Like
Yeah.
she understood
Right.
what I was talking about and what I was experiencing. So
There was another key thing I remember you telling me when we were still living with your parents is I was still gaining an understanding at this point. I still didn't understand anxiety fully. Okay. I always just thought it was, again, a personality difference that, oh, she just gets nervous about things more than I do. I didn't understand that anxiety was an actual mental thing people deal with, you know? But I remember you telling me, you said, not only am I anxious, but it's so hard because everyone I live with, I love them. I love my parents. I love you, but y'all they don't understand because unless you go through anxiety, those are the only people that can understand what it's like.
Yeah.
Like, even if you describe how you're feeling to me,
it's very lonely.
it feels
Yeah.
very lonely. And people with anxiety, I'm assuming, can have anxiety about talking about anxiety. Am I right? Like,
Yeah.
it's something that a lot of people don't like to talk about today, but we are seeing a trend about more people talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Social media, churches even sometimes a little bit. And I think that's a really, really good thing. But I just want to speak to spouses of people. Like, if you're married to someone that has anxiety and you don't like me, just a tip for you is just listen.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
You
sound
don't
good?
have to try to fix it.
Just
Yeah,
listen. They just want to outlet. They want to talk to you. You don't have to try to fix it like Tori said. I tried so hard, like, I don't know, bringing up things you liked, or I don't know, just it didn't work because, it's more complex than you think.
Mm-hmm.
I would say just be a listener And that's really hard to do sometimes, especially for men. Men love to try to solve the problem and or try to try to say like, well, if I were feeling this way,
Yeah.
XYZ, but that won't work for your spouse or your girlfriend or whoever it is. But I would say listen. And the second thing, which may seem obvious, but maybe you don't think about it, is to pray over your spouse. I will say this right now. I pray every day over my wife. I pray over her, and I believe the Lord will completely heal her of this, and this will be completely gone someday. How the Lord wants to do that is up to Him. When the Lord wants to do that is also up to Him. Does that diminish or lower my faith in what the Lord can do? Absolutely not. I leave it in His hands. I'm sure Tori has prayed a lot for the Lord to remove this from her as well.
Hmm.
But I would just say that if you're married to someone or you know someone that has anxiety, number one, just listen, be a listener. Number two, pray for them. And number three, if I can add this, this is a bonus for people who either deal with anxiety or married with someone, is don't be afraid to seek help. Would you agree with
Yes.
that?
I think that I probably should have sought help a lot sooner than I
Yep.
did. But there was things that stopped me from that.
Mm-hmm.
One was the fact that I was a pastor's kid,
Right.
and I know that seemed silly to say that, but growing up as a pastor's kid, I had this like belief about myself that I almost like had to be perfect.
Right.
And nobody like told me that. My parents never said that or anything, but it was just something that I dealt with. And so a lot of times that I could have opened up and asked for prayer or gone to the altar and received prayer, I didn't because I was afraid of what people would think of me.
Right.
Um, when I started to learn what anxiety was, and I knew that I had people that I knew that were on medication or that went to therapy, I just didn't do that because I thought that I would be like judged for it or
Mm-hmm.
something, or that people would think that I didn't have enough faith to be
Right.
healed because I would have to go to a doctor or something. And so a lot of those things kind of held me back from seeking help until my parents like forced me to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I really like how your doctor worded it. She said something, and you can finish this thought here, but when you went to see her, she said that, what did she say about when people need help with certain things with
Yeah,
their,
she said like if you have any kind of physical condition, like if you have a heart
yeah,
problem, like obviously you're going to take medication for
yeah,
that. And she said that mental health is no different than physical health. And if you have to take medicine to help your mental health, like that's just what you have to do and it's okay. And when she put it into those terms, it like finally clicked with me and I was like, okay, maybe this isn't so bad as what I was thinking it would be.
mm-hmm.
So I'd also, I don't know if this is weird to say, but in that time, I follow a lot of like teacher accounts on
Yeah.
Instagram, music teachers, and there's this one teacher that I'd been following for several years, and I don't know her personally, but I'd been following her teaching journey ever since I became a music teacher. And she had always been very open about her struggle with ADHD and anxiety and
Mm-hmm.
depression. And right around the time that I started talking to my doctor, she had actually started on some medication. And she was very open about the medication that she was on, and she would document like each week like her symptoms that she was experiencing or how she was adjusting to the medication. And a few months later was when I actually started to go on medication. And I think just seeing how open that she was about it and just talking about it and sharing her experience, like, encouraged me. And I saw how beneficial it had been for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of just encouraged me in that journey too.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of power in just talking about your struggles
Yeah, that's
and
kind of the
just
first
not
step
being
is
afraid of it.
talk.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to speak. Otherwise, you're kind of giving anxiety the winning hand if you're not talking about it.
Mhm.
And I also want to add to that, when you talk about the anxiety, also talk about steps you want to take to improve it. Tori and I, she had very serious discussion with me when she went to the doctor and talked about medication. She wanted to make sure I understood how it worked, and that was very important. And they were very sensitive conversations we had. I don't know if you remember, very sensitive, very personal. but we have both had to be on the same page, and I fully supported her in that, and I still do. If you believe that's what's best for you, I can't deny that. But I also want to say this. Some Christians don't like talking about this because a lot of Christians, like Tori kind of hinted at earlier, think, oh, well, if you take medication, your faith is, you don't believe in God, that he can't heal you. No, we believe that. You know what I mean?
Well, and they use those verses like that say, do not be anxious about
Right,
anything. Like the Bible says you shouldn't be anxious, so
right.
just like don't be anxious. Like, but you
You can't
can't do
just shut it
that.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I will say this too, and I know Tori would agree. We both have faith that someday we will be able to come out and say the Lord's completely healed Tori of this anxiety. I have faith in that. I still do, and I still pray it over you every single day, and I mean that. Very wholeheartedly, I pray over you, and I say, Lord, this anxiety, just remove it, heal her. And if it's through the means of this medication, it's that way.
Yeah.
I believe there are spirit-filled people that work on those fields, and that's how God uses them. You
Yeah.
know, I wanted to close our time together. Unless you have something else you want to add. Any last thoughts? You say anything to anxious people today? People dealing with it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that if you are struggling with anxiety, just to reach out to somebody. And if you are somebody that has started to overcome anxiety, like don't be afraid to share your story and your testimony, because I think that if I had had more people that I knew that shared about their struggles, that I wouldn't have felt so alone.
Yep.
And like you mentioned earlier, I found that as I've been talking about it and sharing my story more, that I feel like it's begun to lose its power over me more.
Yeah.
Because when it's not a secret, then it doesn't have that same power over you that it once did. And
Yeah.
I know that medication's not the answer for everybody.
Right.
Right now, that was what I needed, and that's what I still need. But whether it's just talking to a friend or going to therapy or going to a doctor,
Yep.
just like seek help in some way, because
Yeah.
you don't have to struggle with it every day.
Right, and we
Yeah.
also want to remind you that every situation is different. The way anxiety affects this person is not the same way it affects that person. And what Tori just said is also true. Medication is not the answer for everyone. So we're not saying every single person that's dealing with it, go get prescribed something. We're not saying that at all. It may help some people, it may not. Every situation is different. Just let the Holy Spirit guide you on that. But
I did want to say,
Yeah.
too, that I am doing a lot better now. I don't
Yeah.
know if we talked about that. But
Oh, yeah. The good news is, Tori's doing great.
Yeah.
She's her normal
I'm
self,
in my
you know?
third year at my job at Liberty,
Mhm.
and I love it. I really do. I actually am excited to go to work each day,
Yeah,
and
it's
I
great.
find joy in my job, and I still get stressed, and anxiety's still there sometimes.
Yep.
But I feel like it doesn't control me as much. I feel like
Yep.
I have more control
That's
over
good.
it. So yeah, it's been really good. I've found love in my passions again. I
Yeah.
started my business.
Yeah.
And in the darkest time of my anxiety, I didn't
You didn't want to deal with plants.
no, I didn't enjoy the things that once brought me joy.
Mhm.
And so Magnolia Roots is kind of a testament
Yeah.
to my healing, because as I've started to overcome my anxiety, I've been able to pour myself more into my passions and
Yeah.
my dreams more. So.
Yeah. I want to ask you one last question, and then I'll wrap this up. How would you say your faith has helped you on this journey dealing with anxiety?
Um, well, obviously, I pray all
Yep.
the time, and I have the Lord to rely on, and
Absolutely.
a lot of times, like we said, anxiety is a really lonely battle,
Mhm.
because nobody's in your mind, but the Lord is in your mind,
Yeah.
and the Lord knows your thoughts,
Mhm.
and so even if you can't explain it to your husband or to your parents, the Lord knows. And so that was something that got me through a lot, was just prayer. My family that are strong believers, just their support and their encouragement and their prayers, and you too, that helped a lot as well.
Yeah.
So,
Just knowing that you're not alone, that the Lord is there to comfort you. He's our counselor. He's our comfort, our Prince of Peace, just claiming
yeah.
on those things, right?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to close with a scripture that I felt was really relevant to this. And I'm going to read it first, and I'll share a thought, and then we'll say goodbye here to everyone listening. But found in Ephesians, the passage talking about the full armor of God. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. Anxiety is definitely a scheme from the devil, I believe, one of his current favorite weapons against us. And here is a very, very commonly quoted scripture. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So what I wanted to say was, I personally think that the enemy's favorite tactics against us are things we can't see, just like that scripture says. Anxiety is not something we can touch. It's not something we can see. So I believe the enemy knows that and tries to use it to break marriages apart, to pull people from their calling. And that has not happened in your situation. We're still married. I'm supportive of you. I'm rooting for you. I pray for you. I have faith the Lord will heal you. You are still doing what you were called to do. You were called to be a music teacher, and you are still doing that, although the enemy tried to distract you with this anxiety. And so what I want to say is, people dealing with anxiety or knowing of someone dealing with anxiety is claim this scripture, put on that full armor of God, stand firm upon the word, and remember that we don't fight against flesh and blood. We fight against things we can't see, and those are the enemy's absolute favorite tactics today. And so we hope that you are encouraged after hearing our conversation today. And if you are a person dealing with anxiety, again, just talk to someone about it. It can be a family member. It can be a friend. Even you've had a friend that you've shared things with as well from college.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, one of my closest friends from college has had a lot of mental health struggles, and she was somebody that was also very encouraging to me, because she's a strong woman of faith, and she goes to therapy. She's on medication, and
Spirit-filled.
Yeah, and just her sharing her story with me and me talking with her, there's just a lot of power in that, I think.
Yep. So talk to somebody, a friend, a parent, a spouse. Talk to someone about it. That's the first step there. If you know of someone that's dealing with anxiety, pray over them. Pray over them. If you're a person dealing with it, pray over yourself, of course. Put on that full armor like we just read about, and stand firm on his word. And don't be afraid to seek help from professionals who know what they're doing. There are also a lot of Christian counselors. If that's kind of if you're kind of not so certain about counseling, or you're new to that, there are a lot of Christian counselors. Just look them up in town. If you're not sure, you can reach out to us. We have contacts here in Morningside with some excellent Christian Spirit-filled counselors that can help you, or talk to your pastor as well. Pastors are here to help serve people and pray over you. Don't be afraid to speak up about this, because like Tori said, once you start speaking up about it, you begin to have power over it instead of it having power over you. And so know that you're not alone. Tori's one of many testimonies of anxiety and how she's overcoming it, how we've overcome it and are still overcoming it. So be encouraged, receive the Lord's healing over your life, and have hope, and have a brighter look on your life, and just rebuke attacks from the enemy and stand firm on his word. So I want to thank you for tuning in. Tori, thank you so much for doing this. I think the Lord's going to honor you for doing this and sharing your testimony and your thoughts. Thank you all again for tuning in. Can't wait to see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to follow Restoration Podcast on Spotify and Apple. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe.